All right, welcome back to the Net to Net podcast. I'm your host, Sam Kelty, aka Skelt, and today we're back here with an NBA podcast. Today we are going to talk about it's been 1 week since free agency opened this year or this summer, and kind of reflecting on some of the stuff that happened over the week, starting once the league first day everybody could sign on June 30th at 6 o'clock is when people could sign. Um, so over this past week, we kind of saw kind of like the pieces fall. It pretty much once Paul George, like I mentioned in the last episode, once Paul George signed that huge max contract with the 76ers, and then the dominoes start falling into place, and you see now a lot of the big names and the big time players that either were free agents or were eligible for the extension on their existing contracts sign. Like I mentioned, we saw Tatum sign, Tyrese Maxey, just to name a few. So, kind of the biggest things is what we talked about is kind of the fallout from a lot of those big moves that happened over the past last week. One of the biggest ones is the Golden State Warriors. What are they doing without Klay Thompson? Yes, he didn't have the best season this year. I believe his numbers were down from previous years, and then we also have to think about him coming off two major injuries, an Achilles and an ACL, and how they can do that. So in there was a sign and trade. It was, I believe, a first ever 6-team trade with the Warriors, the 76ers, the Mavericks, uh, the Timberwolves, sending a lot of moving pieces here and there. How aggressive will the Warriors be losing marquee player in Klay Thompson? They then go out and get in a sign and trade, end up getting Buddy Hield, who's going to be on a 2-year deal, which is guaranteed for $21 million, with a player option on that third year, and then a non-guaranteed on the fourth. And we saw pretty much they go out and get scores. They go out and get a Buddy Hield, and then they go out and get, as well as Kyle Anderson, who is a 3-and-D kind of player, can play as backup minutes at the 4, can sometimes play the 5. I feel like the Warriors struggled with their depth last season, and you now go out and get a Buddy Hield, a Kyle Anderson, to kind of fill out that bench. And I don't think, to be honest, I don't think we're done seeing what the Warriors do. They're still in play for Lowry Markkanen if the Utah Jazz decide to trade him. I know they've been looking to move on from him, so that is the biggest question for that move. Some other key notable things is Mo Bamba signs a 1-year deal with the LA Clippers. He spent last season in a reserve role with the 76ers. He can come in and be that backup 5 for whoever they're starting at the 5, if it's Zubac or someone else. And he has minutes as a starter, and so we'll see how it goes. I don't expect too much craziness from it. Just he's going to be in a reserve role for the most time. And then we saw James Wiseman sign with the Indiana Pacers, kind of filling in that Jalen Smith void, that reserved role as a big man presence, backups for Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam. James Wiseman, 2-year contract. He played a career high. He was the number 2 overall pick in 2020. Never really lived up to the hype with Golden State. Had a lot of injuries, and now he's just going to be kind of he's a role player now at this point. I don't think he's going to start. especially with Miles Turner and how the Pacers did last year. They keep that core together. And then, so he's not really going to do a ton. So hopefully he can come in and provide those minutes that they are losing from losing Jalen Smith, who signed with the Bulls earlier in the week. Talking about regrouping, Boston Celtics were able to retain Xavier Tillman on a 2-year deal. He provided role minutes, especially once Porzingis went down. And then, as was Jonathan Isaac resigning with the Orlando Magic, keeping that core together, signing a new 5-year, $84 million contract to stay with the Magic. The Magic could be scary. We saw kind of a glimpse of them, but we definitely could see more of them this upcoming year and throughout uh, their run, because they could be good for the future. They have really good pieces there, especially getting KCP, um, and retaining Isaac, and you still have Wendell Carter, Jalen Suggs, Paulo Banchero, and Franz Wagner, just to name a few. Franz Wagner, who did sign a 5-year rookie max contract worth $224 million, which can rise if he makes an All NBA team to around $269 million. That core is up and coming. Definitely could see them being a force to be reckoned with in the East, with the Knicks and the Celtics and the Bucks for years to come. I know everybody kind of knew LeBron James was a free agent, but we all knew he was going to resign in LA. I don't think Lakers take Bronny if they don't think they would be able to bring back LeBron. LeBron did return on a 2-year, 104 max, which has a player option and a no trade clause. So I doubt the Lakers move on from LeBron at any point over this 2 years. I think if he leaves, it's via free. He'll opt out and leave. Definitely could see LeBron opting out next year, just because usually big stars will opt out to see what's going on with the team and then restructure their contract to be able to bring in more supporting roles. I think the Lakers are kind of in this weird spot if they wanted to bring in someone to help. They looked at Valanciunas. They looked at DeRozan. They looked at trying to acquire Paul George, Klay Thompson, um, and none of them actually came. So now the Lakers are trying to now fill out their roster, um, and see if they can run it back. But the problem is you have to have role players that can play, and you have to have the money too. And right now, LeBron James is making now the 104 max. Anthony Davis is on that huge contract, so they are paying a lot of people. Just over with those two alone is just a lot of money for them. So now we'll see where they go from there. And then kind of the biggest news so far, other than yes, LeBron James signing is big, but I think we all expected that. A bigger news, I would say, that wasn't really expected is Chicago moving on from DeMar DeRozan. There had been talks in relationship that DeRozan wanted to return to Chicago, but he was open to returning with the right team. And now we've seen in Chicago this offseason get rid of Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey in a couple seconds. And then we see a sign and trade with DeMar DeRozan, sending DeMar DeRozan to the Sacramento Kings, as well as facilitating a 3-team trade. So now Chicago ends up taking Chris Duarte and 2 second-round picks, and then shipping Harrison Barnes and an unprotected pick in 2031 to the San Antonio Spurs to make the money work, because if the Bulls would have taken on Duarte and Harrison Barnes, they would be over the luxury tax, which they can't go over. So they us to facilitate that move, because they had to use Harrison Barnes in the trade, because they would also be over the cap with the contract if they were signing DeRozan and keeping Harrison Barnes, which Harrison Barnes was making a lot of money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with I'll start with the Sacramento side. This is a win now move. It gives them more offensive firepower. Now you think about Sabonis, Fox, Monk, DeRozan, Keegan Murray. Very good team. But now if we look into that, there's a lot of defensive liabilities on the other side of the floor. With DeRozan's not a great defender, Fox is not a great defender, and Sabonis is not a great defender. So there is a little bit. Sabonis is a decent defender, but he's not a great interior defender. Now you're relying heavily on Keegan Murray, sorry, to start at the 4 and be their best ball defender on the team. Which, if they were trying to make a win now move, why not go for a KCP? I did like bringing Monk back because Monk had a great season, which I mentioned in the last podcast. But this shows that the Kings want to win now. The Kings have a window. Fox hasn't signed that extension because he did say previously in this offseason that he wants to see the direction of what Sacramento is doing. So that sounds like they brought in another superstar to help kind of take the load off of Sabonis and take the load off of Sabonis, which makes sense. I think they needed that third person. DeRozan's had a very solid season with Chicago. He was averaging about 24 points with Chicago. Last year he averaged about 21. But now you think about this, the Kings will avoid being below the tax once they sign 2 veteran minimums. Now, this is probably the projected starting lineup. So you'll have De'Aaron Fox at the 1, Monk at the 2, DeRozan at the 3, Keegan at the 4, and Sabonis at the 5. You could probably switch between DeRozan and Keegan depending on the matchup that plays the 4 and 5. I think that's going to be a very good starting 5. Because last year we had Keenan. They inserted Keenan Ellis into the lineup towards the end of the season and during the playoffs at the 3. They also had Kevin Huerter. He struggled to shoot the ball though, so they took him out of the lineup. They also brought in Jaden McDaniels. It could be an interesting move. They also re-signed Mike Brown to a contract extension, who had a very good season with this team. The Kings, like I said, the Kings are ready to move in a win now mode. Can they progress farther than the first round? We haven't seen them get far in the playoffs since probably Chris Webber was there, and that was the early 2000s. And this is the Kings team that had back-to-back winning seasons, making the playoffs, playing. So, the Kings, yes, if you're thinking about win now mode, it totally works. Great. You get them for 3 years. Not a huge deal. There's no trade clause. There's no extra money. It works out. Now going to the Chicago side, and being a Bulls fan, to be honest, I don't know the direction of what we're trying to do. We've seen us trade Caruso and for Giddey in a couple seconds, when in the regular season we could have gotten a first pick for Caruso. We could have got a first round pick for Zach LaVine. We could have got multiple firsts for DeRozan in the offseason, at the deadline, or during the season. Now we're kind of trading them for nothing. We've literally got money, a couple second round picks, Chris Duarte, and Josh Giddey. Our GM has said we're not doing a rebuild, but this looks like we are doing a rebuild. And like I mentioned last week in the podcast, Chicago is in purgatory. Chicago is in purgatory because of how this is all happening and what's going on in trades and who we're signing and who we're letting go and who we're bringing in. We drafted Montez Buzuelos, but we let Drummond walk. We traded Caruso. We traded DeRozan in the sign and trade. We're probably going to trade LaVine, and we're probably going to trade Vucevic. So we are probably in win now mode. And then Lonzo Ball, like I mentioned last time, is pretty much up in the air because who knows if he's actually going to play or not this year. That's where everything is kind of falling for Chicago. This is a rebuild now. We are rebuilding fully. They have not said we were. We are rebuilding. You don't make these moves if we're not. Now, we are probably going to go into that dark day as a Chicago Bulls fan for probably a few years. It's probably going to be another rebuild, just like we saw before we got Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, Jimmy Butler, when we brought in Carlos Boozer and Pau Gasol via free agency. So it's definitely going to be like kind of give you those early 2000 vibes of we dominated the 90s. It's time to rebuild now because every team goes through a rebuild and it's how long it takes is really where it matters. And honestly, sometimes the longer it takes, the better the outcome is because we've seen teams go through quick rebuilds and fail, but we've also seen those teams that have gone through long, hard rebuilds and they worked out. We saw it when Boston Celtics decided to move on from Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, let Ray Allen walk the year before. And recoup all these draft picks. We saw the same thing with Sam Presti and what he did in OKC, getting all these draft picks, and now they have a solid squad. Can Chicago do that? The problem is Chicago doesn't have the assets in the first round picks because we use those first round picks to trade for superstars or stars of teams to make a run at a win now mode. When we traded Vucevic, I still in my head did not like getting Vucevic. We gave up a little too much. I think we gave up Wendell Carter, who I think we didn't have time to develop, which could have been good. We used our first round picks to get Zach LaVine. At the time, it was a good move. Now it kind of exploded. Using our first round picks to get a sign and trade with DeMar DeRozan a few years ago. Signing Lonzo Ball to a huge contract, ends up getting it, knowing he has his injury history. So Chicago now, I think it needs to go through a rebuild. I think this could be Billy Donovan's last year just because I don't think Billy Donovan is the right man to lead us through a rebuild. He was a great college basketball coach. Everybody really knows him from the time when he was in Florida and he went back-to-back with those teams with the Joakim Noah, Al Horford, and the Corey Brewers on that team when they went back-to-back. In the NBA, he's just been kind of mediocre. He hasn't really, honestly, yes, he's better than Jim Boylan, but our best finish was finishing second in the Central in his second season. After that, and then losing the first round, we made the playoffs one time with Billy Donovan, and we haven't made it since. We've gotten knocked out of the play-in pretty much every time we've been involved. So I think it's time to move on. Like I said, he was one of the best coaches in Florida history. One of the best college basketball coaches that's coached. But I think after this year, if we are going to go through a proper rebuild, I think we need to get a new coach. Maybe look at I don't know. We could look at a bunch of assistant coaches. Chris Quinn from Miami is an option. James Borrego, who's an assistant right now. So there are a lot of assistant coaches that I think could be head coaches. I think there's also some coaches that maybe we could pry to come to coach at Chicago. Chicago's still a viable team and a big team with the history, just on the history alone. But we have to bring in someone that's going to be bought into the system, that is going to be here for the long haul, that is going to have to take time, and I think we can do that. It's just hopefully, let's see how it goes. Other than the DeRozan thing, the Charlotte Hornets brought back Miles Bridges, keeping kind of that core group together. Miles Bridges, LaMelo Ball, uh, Brandon Miller, and those boys. I like the signing. I kind of wanted Chicago to go after him if we weren't kind of leaning towards this rebuild. I thought he would be a great fit for Chicago, but he ends up staying in Charlotte. He had a good season after missing the entire 2022 season. Um, he's very good. They also ended up getting Josh Green in the sign-in trade to kind of help their bench team as well, get more depth. I think Charlotte, the Hornets could be good in the future. They still have a long ways to go. They got a rookie coach now, a new coach, a young team. So it'll be interesting to see. The big question is, can LaMelo Ball stay healthy? He's been very injury prone the last few years. Really, actually, honestly, both balls have been very injury prone. Can they stay healthy is really the main thing. Other than that, there hasn't been a ton of big moves. Just like I mentioned, a lot of role players like Dario Saric signing a 2-year deal worth $10.6 million with the Denver Nuggets. They help kind of build out their bench because they did lose some key pieces. I'm in free agency, like in the starting lineup now. Let's see who's going to replace KCP. They also have a bunch of young players that can kind of now step up into that role. We saw Christian Braun. Can Christian Braun take that next step? We kind of saw flashes of that during their championship run. A little progression from last year, but can he step into that role? So there'll be a lot of questions to be answered through this. But yeah, that kind of wraps up the free agency portion for now, just because there hasn't been a ton of moves, like I mentioned. But Summer League did start today or yesterday. The first game, obviously, was the Los Angeles Lakers versus Sacramento Kings. DeRozan was at the game. They gave him a standing ovation because they did announce it. The thing was announced during the Summer League game, so it was he got a standing O. But yeah, pretty much the storyline of this was we got to see LeBron James' son, Bronny James, and Dalton Connect, their 2 picks. Dalton Connect going in the first round, falling to them at 17, and then Bronny James falling to them at 55 in the second round. So this was an anticipated debut, and it was quite underwhelming. Both of them struggled from the field in their first game. I don't know if it was nerves, but they combined for a 5 and 21 shooting from the field. Dalton Connect went 1 of 4 from the 3, and Bronny went 0 for 3 from the 3. Dalton Connect did get to the free throw line 9 times, went 5 and 9, and Bronny went 0 for 2. Bronny played 22 minutes, scored 4 points, 2 of 9 shooting, and Dalton Connect played 26 minutes, 3 of 12 for 12 points. This was very an underwhelming game for Bronny. I know a lot of people are going to say it's hard to base it off a player who had that cardiac arrest about a year ago, which kept him out a few months at USC. So he only ended up playing half the season at USC, averaging like 4.5 points a game on 29% shooting, which wasn't great. Bronny's never going to be really known as a scorer in an offensive presence. His game does not show that. Yes, he's young, so he has time to develop and time to get into that, kind of grow into that. He's a very good defensive player. He is very good on the defensive side. He has very good promise to be an all defensive team player caliber. Can his offensive game transition? And this season it's going to be so hard to judge how he looks because he is going to be a developmental player because he doesn't have that scoring punch, and we didn't really get to see that huge sample size at USC. Yes, he didn't really average much in high school either, but he's still young. He still has time. I don't think he's going to be an NBA player. He will be in the league I think he'll be in the league for a while. I could see him being another, like a Caruso, a really good defensive player, can go out and give you 10, 15, 10, 12 points a game and play very good defense. I think he's gonna be one of those players. Now his brother, on the other hand, when he comes up, I think he's gonna be a phenomenal scorer, a phenomenal offensive force. But other than that, the Lakers, it was very underwhelming watching it, but the Lakers ended up losing 108 to 94. Um, we did see JJ Redick there. He was not coaching, but he was there, and it was interesting to watch. Kind of him interacting with that. So, yeah, it was a very interesting game. They had very good all around from the uh, Kings play. They had a very good outing. Arms for the Sacramento Kings had a very good game. He scored 32 points on 12 of 17 shooting. He had a very good game. Ford also had a really good game with 17, and Zaire Sneed had 13 off the 13. So, all in all, good day for the Kings. And they get DeMar DeRozan, so that's another bonus and a win. The other games that happened last night, we did see the Warriors play the Heat. The Warriors won very seamlessly, 105 to 66. We saw some notable names that played for the Heat. Khalil Ware, their draft pick this year, 12 points. Kind of struggled from the field shooting in 24 minutes, but he did grab 6 rebounds, as well as Keontae Johnson, who also had a decent game. No, other than that, not a ton of production from Miami. They did struggle this game. They shot 28 points from the field, which was pretty poor on their end. But from the Golden State Warriors side, a very good game from Pito. He had 26 points, shot 10 of 14 from the field, as well as getting some bench help from Ethan Thompson, who scored 27 off the bench. Posepsky and Trace Jackson, who had decent roles last year, are on the roster. They just did not play due to coaches this season. But, yeah, Warriors Summer League team, it was very good to see who some of these players, see if they make the rotation, if they make the squad. But a lot of these guys you're going to see be playing in the G League next year. And then one of the last games we saw is the San Antonio Spurs versus the Charlotte Hornets. We saw Nick Smith Jr., the second-year man, struggled from the field, 10 points, 4 of 17. Bryce McGowan also struggled, draft pick from last year. Struggled. He shot 2 of 10, only 6 points. Most of their scoring came from Muhammad Gay. He had 21 points, 9 of 14 shooting. Pretty good all in all. And then from the San Antonio Spurs side, we did get to see Stephon Castle, their first draft pick in this first round. He looked he had flashes, 12 points, 4 of 12 shooting. And then Harrison Ingram also played for them as well. And CD Sissoko, their draft pick last year. So all in all, it was kind of like everybody struggled, but everybody kind of contributed to the win, to the loss. There wasn't a dominant score. There was a lot of struggling from the field. Harrison Ingram shot 1 of 6. City Sissoko shot 1 of 5. Jameer Nelson Jr. shot 3 of 10. So there was a lot of struggles from this, and I feel like we're going to see that a lot from these players. We're not going to see a ton of we're not going to see a ton of good shooting nights. You might see it here and there, but it's a lot of kind of seeing these young players. They're going to be raw. They're not going to be as developed like we usually see in the regular season, but that's really what the summer league is, to see who can contribute to good minutes on their reserves and rotation, and then who's going to be in the G League that still needs to develop, that maybe has something down the line. But yeah, summer league has kicked off in the full season, and then kind of talking lastly, Team USA started their training camp this week. So yeah, they get a couple games in. I know they play Canada here coming up, and then they've been scrimmaging against another Team USA, a bunch of guys from the league to scrimmage against. But yeah, everybody's looking eyes on the Olympics. This could be one of the best teams we've ever had. Could rival the Dream Team and the Redeem Team. Um, I don't think I think they could rival them, but I would probably go with either the Dream Team or the Redeem Team. This team is very good. Don't get me wrong. You have the likes of Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, LeBron James. But yeah, so they'll play on July 10th. They play an exhibition against Canada, the likes of Shea Gillis and Jamal Murray. And then they open up play against Serbia on July 28th. And then on July 31st against South Sudan. And then on August 3rd, they'll play the Olympic qualifier. And then once they go to, once they shift with the quarterfinals, will be on August 6th, semifinals August 8th, and then the gold medal game August 10th. So I expect us to be there at the gold medal game on August 10th. This team, your potential starting lineup could be LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, and Joel Embiid. That's a chance. And that's saying a lot because then Kawhi's not starting. So there will be a ton of big stars. And we're thinking about these players that are on this team. It's most likely, like I said, going to be LeBron, Steph, KD, Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis. And then you think off the bench, Devin Booker. You got Anthony Edwards. You got Jason Tatum, Drew Holiday, Bam Adebayo, Tyrese Halliburton, and Kawhi Leonard. You have a solid bench. This team is going to be insane, and I can't wait to watch Team USA go for the gold. We definitely need to win this. We haven't won one in a while. So, yeah. That kind of wraps up today's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll get the rest of the boys back on the podcast soon. They were just busy today, but you'll probably see this tomorrow as well as the soccer episode today. So hope you guys enjoyed. Peace, and I will see you guys on the flip. See you.